Salutations, this is Tor and welcome to Valhalla TV. Thank you for joining us for part 2 of our ranking of the PlayStation Studios. Now, since I did part 1, Sony has been a busy boy and they've bought a few other studios as well. Now, it will be affecting the list slightly, bumping up the number from 17 studios from the original 16, which I started the list on. One of those studios, like I said, will be added to the list and probably have an idea of who it is. And the other studio, Valkyrie Entertainment, they are not joining this list. They did make one game at one point, however, since then they've been a support studio, and Sony's been very clear about what they're going to utilize them for, and that is providing support to their other first parties. So it doesn't qualify here. Also, with the addition of Sony purchasing Haven Studios, Jade Raymond from Ubisoft fame and a brief stint at Stadia Games, she's created this studio. Sony has bought them. They are not going to qualify for this list. Regardless of the talent involved, they have not made one single game. Enough of the chit chat, let's dive right into it. Band Studio, best known for the Siphon Filter series, Uncharted, Golden Abyss, and Days Gone. This was Sony's first Western American-based purchase as a first-party studio. They bought these guys all the way back in 2000. Now, Bend has a pretty interesting history. First game they ever made was the absolutely infamous Bubsy 3D. Back in 1996. However, Sony took a chance on them as a second party, and together they collaborated and created Siphon Filter, sort of Sony's in-house answer to Metal Gear Solid. It was a little bit more of an action-focused spin on it, on stealth, and made an interesting variant on the genre. So the first entry was quite popular, and Bend continued the trilogy throughout the PS1's life cycle, and then when it came time to the next generation, they pumped out a few entries for the PS2 and also the PSP, which is interesting because Sony's portable scene basically became their main focus over something like the PS2. So Bend was put to work solely on portable games for the PSP, and Siphon Filter essentially went with it. And it kind of lost its prestige as well. Whereas something like Metal Gear Solid just sort of became more blockbustery, more bombastic. Siphon Filter just sort of became an afterthought in the portable scene, and that franchise kind of died, while the studio lost interest in it as well. Now, while they were relegated to being the portable guys, PSP sold amazing in Japan, but you know, Japanese gamers have a particular taste. Bend kind of was the answer to more Western audiences. They would take bigger franchises from Sony IP, from other Sony studios, and then make portable spin-offs for them. Games were great, but however, they were sort of in the shadow of these bigger, more well-nourished Sony studios, really, and they felt a little bit more like an afterthought. They continued as well by doing a spin-off for the Resistance franchise with the Resistance Retribution, which is a pretty solid spin-off entry. And then of course, their really big title was Uncharted Golden Abyss for Vita, one of the quintessential Vita game titles. Took everything about the Uncharted series, transitioned it over to a portable experience in a lot of fun ways. Of course, a lot of the mechanics were just stupid. Definitely not on par with part 2 or part 4, but it sits quite comfortably above the first game for sure. And then what happened? Sony pretty much lost faith in the Vita, and then the portable scene, they kind of dropped their interest in it like a hot potato.
Very hot potato.
What was Ben gonna do? They were kind of left without a purpose at that point. Well, they pitched a few ideas. They got the money to enter back into the console space with Days Gone, the very ambitious open world action / horror game. Yeah, I mean, the reception to this one is controversial. You know, the critics absolutely ripped it a new one, but however, the fans loved it. User reviews were great. Sales were hot, very, very hot. And it became kind of this cult sensation, really, where a lot of people champion this title as a bit of an unsung hero over on the PS4. Me personally, I played it. I thought there was a lot of great elements, a lot of sort of meh elements, but a lot of fantastic ones. I really dug the story. There's a lot of rough edges. The story structure as well is a bit bizarre, but yeah, definitely an underrated title and should have gotten a bit of a fair reception from the critics, I believe. The reception for this though has put them in a very interesting place in that now they're kind of one of these AAA big boys, you know, but a lot of the older guard has left the studio with a lot of younger people taking it over, and who knows what the future brings. Days Gone 2 is, or at least the initial conception of it has been taken down, so that's not going to be the priority. It's going to be a new IP, but Bend been rejuvenated by Days Gone and could create some really cool new IP, so they're not on par with sort of the heavy hitters here. They're on their way, at least doing more interesting stuff than they did in the portable space. Bluepoint Games, known for Shadow of the Colossus remake, Uncharted Drake Collection, and Demon's Souls remake. So this brand new fresh purchase from Sony is a pretty interesting one. They have a long-standing relationship with Sony. In fact, their first game, Blast Factor, pretty forgettable space shooter, was also the first title ever released on PSN. However, this was their last original IP really. After that, Bluepoint became the remaster studio. They started with the God of War collection, where they remastered God of War 1 and 2 for the PlayStation 3 system. They did an excellent job on the Metal Gear Solid collection, but then really took it to the next level with Uncharted, where they collected the first 3 Uncharted games. However, they didn't just up-res them for PlayStation 4. They reworked game mechanics. They reworked animations. They just made each game play as you felt it should. You know, usually ports are money jobs for indie studios to sort of get, okay, let's get a little bit of cash. They really took it serious. Of course, that even came to the next level when they started doing ground-up remakes. Shadow of the Colossus is an incredible masterpiece from PS2. However, certain things about it have dated. What they took was they didn't just rework the graphics, they reworked the gameplay, they reworked mechanics. I mean, it just ran smooth, it ran beautifully, and played like the game you remembered in your head. It played like that, as opposed to playing like the actual game, which sort of is a little frustrating in modern gaming. They took that to the next level with Demon's Souls, the cult classic, kind of the originator of Dark Souls. A lot of people slept on this game, which was a PS3 exclusive, but they really brought this forth into the spotlight with a fantastic job they did in remaking it for the PlayStation 5. Now, what does this purchase mean though? Because they are a high quality studio, but their pedigree is in just remaking stuff. They do that really well, right? But essentially that's what they do. They don't make their own original IP, which is kind of what Sony does, is they'll buy first party studios with an interesting backlog and then let them do something AAA. Now Bluepoint has experience in AAA space, but not making original stuff. So with this purchase, it's interesting. What do they want them to do forward? Will they continue to be sort of their legacy studios? So they'll throw them older IPs. I mean, just thinking of it, they could do really cool stuff, like maybe a Siphon Filter remake, or even proper remakes of the earlier God of War franchise. The big rumor is a Metal Gear Solid remake of the first title. Or will they go into the brand new original IP space? Now that they have the money, they have the backing and the freedom, they could do that. And they have confirmed that their next project after being acquisitioned is a brand new title. So it's not a remake. They've been official about that. However, maybe it's a combination of both of these things. So to the fact that they're doing Bloodborne 2. Now this would fit into the pointers of they know From Software, they know it through and through. They remade and they knew the code and the structure and the mechanics of Demon's Souls. They're able to replicate that amazingly, but then to create a brand new IP from something that's a legacy to the Sony wheelhouse, Now that might be what Sony thinks they can use them for. Anyway, we'll find out what the plans are. We can only judge them on their backlog, and they're incredible at what they do, but it can't really hold a light to some of these other studios that do original stuff. Hence, their positioning on this list. Media Molecule, known for Little Big Planet Parts 1 and 2, Tearaway, and Dreams. The creation of this studio is pretty interesting because it was made up a bunch of ex-Lionhead studio members. If you don't know Lionhead, they formerly were an Xbox exclusive studio. Probably their claim to fame was the Fable franchise. A bunch of members left that studio and they wanted to form a new one. They essentially jumped from Xbox straight over to Sony, where Sony writ them up a contract and made them a first-party member straight from the gate, allowing them to create basically whatever the hell they wanted. So what the result was just the lovely, endearing Little Big Planet. For me personally, I always love playing these games. I mean, the creation tools is something that I never was able to get into, although other people have embraced it, and it was just pretty crazy what you could do. As a platformer, they were okay. Those mechanics could be a little bit more polished, if I'm being honest.
Gotta be fucking kidding.
But just the world and the charm and the style, I mean, it was just ridiculous. And it was really went against the grain as well of that sort of gaming generation where everything was very aimed at the older teens and had to be dark and gritty. Media Molecule comes along and just does something completely different, something that would appeal to kids but also adults. After 2 entries though of this franchise, they handed the IP over to Sumo Digital, who has been running with that with the later entries, and Media Molecule focused their attention over on the failing PS Vita, tried to give it a killer IP, which they did very much with the game Tearaway. Really cool use of the Vita functionality, as usual, a charming, a wildly colorful adventure with edge and humor to it. However, of course, the Vita, no one really embraced it, so this title kind of got forgotten, although it did eventually receive a PS4 port, which brought it to a much wider audience. However, compared to Little Big Planet, it really was not as big of a hit, and then they pretty much went radio silent for a very long number of years, just hinting at this odd thing that they were working on called Dreams. Now, we'd seen teasers, we'd seen sort of vague descriptions of what it is. It's a game about making games, but you can also do this, you can do that. Obtuse teasers were like this animal playing piano, and it's like it was all made in game. No one really knew what the hell this was until it released in early access and then it dropped. And essentially it's that. It's a game making piece of software, but it's a game making piece of software that's essentially a game. Its tools are very easy, I'd say, compared to your actual game development tools. You can create stuff in VR, which is nuts. Yeah, once this did a wide release, it sort of didn't make the crazy bank that Sony may have wanted because of all these years in development, but it's kind of been a cult hit.
So whatever your heart's looking for, you can probably find it, because hopefully someone out there in the community has made it for you. It might even be one of your own things that someone else is looking for.
Now, on the flip side of all that, now while it's innovative and has a thriving, if niche, community that's supported, what essentially is it? It's a game-making software. However, it's limited to the console space, and it's limited to making a video game with a DualShock 4 controller or making VR games with PS Move controllers, and completely limits the freedom and functionality that, say, something like Game Maker Studio on the PC has. So what really is the purpose of it? Now, you can't fault Media Molecule for supporting it. However, they took 7 years to develop this. It came out, it didn't blow up. And now PlayStation's moving into a more business-focused area where there's not really that much room for experimentation, as you can see with the shutting down of Studio Japan. And also Media Molecule, who, really were the one type of studio that Sony had like this, because they really did stuff that no one else in the first party could do. But now you have guys like Pixel Opus who are coming up and getting resources put into them. And then also you have guys like Team Asobi who were much smaller but now have major resources put into them, and they're pumping stuff out that's arguably on par with Nintendo's first party. They might even surpass them, because Media Molecule is just sort of tethered to supporting Dreams. They haven't released a proper game in close to a decade. So it's going to be an interesting couple of years for Media Molecule. Are they just going to be tethered to dreams? If so, it might spell doom to them. I hate to say it. And that would be a shame because they're an incredible talent, an incredible voice, and a real gem within the first party PlayStation ecosystem. Housemarque, known for Super Stardust, Dead Nation, Nex Machina, and Returnal. So one of the freshest purchases here on this list is this Finnish developer that has been around since the early 90s. Their claim to fame is breakneck arcade action titles over on the downloadable scene. A lot of these titles they did exclusively for Sony, so it's not a big surprise they got bought up. Super Stardust was PSN's first real major indie hit and remains an exclusive to the day. Over the years, they did try to spread out away from Sony. They went multi-platinum with Outland, which was this pretty cool platformer published by Ubisoft that was a bit different from their style of game, but quite interesting sort of mechanics. And they even did an exclusive title for Xbox, Golf Tee It Up. Yeah, nobody has ever heard of that. But, which brings me to the point. The stuff they did with Sony were really their bread and butter. Beautiful collaboration. I mean, we got a list of Super Stardust, Dead Nation, Resogun, Alienation, Nex Machina, even Matterfall, which was a lot of people slept on. But then, of course, the evolution went to Returnal. Returnal sort of takes all the things they're awesome and good at, turns it into a AAA exclusive PS5 title. As divisive as that game is, it really tells you that this connotations of Sony not wanting to take risks, not wanting to take chances, it's kind of bullshit. So sorry, I know it's a popular opinion, but I know game was greenlit when Jim Ryan wasn't in charge, the Antichrist according to a lot of people. But why would Sony buy these guys if they don't want to continue making games like Returnal? Sure, the weirder indie stuff might be neglected, but in terms of what they are doing with the AAA space, they still are taking major risks and they're banking big on it. So sorry, I don't mean to do a personal rant, but that's just my piece. These guys make for a really cool addition to it. Like I said, not a surprising addition, but a really, really cool addition to the first party family going forward in the future. Guerilla Games, known for the Killzone franchise and Horizon Zero Dawn.
They started out as Lost Boys Games, doing some low-key Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance games. Decent arcadey games, but nothing that really signified they were an interesting developer. However, they moved into the FPS genre with
the sort of rough-edged Vietnam shooter Shell Shocked, and Sony had tasked them with the almost impossible mandate of creating a Halo killer. Xbox had been rising up, and one of the main reasons for that was the Halo franchise, which was basically brought all the bells and whistles of PC's FPS shooters over to the console market to a lot of success. Sony didn't have anything like that, so they wanted their own in-house answer. Guerrilla, quite ambitious Dutch studio, said, okay, well, we're gonna do it, and the result was Killzone. Personally, I find that a pretty crappy game, if I'm being frank. I mean, in all fairness, it was dated by PS2 tech. It had a lot going against it, including rush production and things like that. But yeah, you take that result and you look at the first Killzone game, you look at Halo Combat Evolved, and it's just incredible. Halo Combat Evolved you still can play to this day, and it still just pops. Killzone 1, I've tried a few times.
No, not Johnson. He was only a boy. Got the bastard!
Just as a PS fanboy, I've tried a few times. I've never been able to get through over half of the game. It's really that awkward, and yeah, just meh. But the concept was interesting, taking Halo sci-fi combat with the World War II shooters, combining them together.
The reception of the game was lukewarm. It sold alright though. Sony did then buy them in 2015. They renamed themselves Guerilla Games.
Sony continued to sort of push Guerrilla's efforts into building the series up. Killzone 2, of course, was controversial for the hype-filled fake teaser that was released in E3. However, the game that came out was not bad. It was actually pretty cool. Technically, it's still a marvel. Felt really good and bombastic to play. Couldn't beat Halo, but was a vast improvement over the first game and was a pretty cool FPS for that generation. Guerilla continued. Part 3, I think it's even better, arguably quite underrated. Had a much better story than the second one, had better locations, more varied environments, and some cool additional gameplay mechanics. And then you had stuff like the Liberation spin-off, the PSP, which was a lot of fun. Mercenary, it's kind of my favorite game in the franchise, to be honest, for the Vita. Had a lot of cool ideas. And then PS4 launch title Shadowfall, which was fine. It was alright, just like the other games. Technically stunning, graphically stunning, kind of shallow. They never really rivaled Halo as they wanted to, and I think that was the issue. They always had that to live up to, and even if an entry was good, it just would always be overshadowed by that concept. Anyhow, Guerrilla sort of had become a one-trick pony, really. They were the Killzone guys. So, however, Sony, similar to how Sony led studios that were sort of has-beens, like London Studio or Bend Studio last generation, they gave them a shot at doing something brand new, creating a fresh AAA IP for the PS4 console. The answer was Horizon Zero Dawn. So arguably is a lot of critics will say that was one of the best video games of last generation, if not over on the PS4 console. Gorgeous environments, really cool mechanics of hunting, open world exploration, and most importantly, for Guerrilla, had a really good story as well, an appealing main character. From that, they also created the Decima engine as well. It should go on to be used by Hideo Kojima for Death Stranding, and totally revitalized Guerrilla as a studio, as one of the big hitters over in the first party scene, as opposed to being, those Halo wannabes.
And that's only been further cemented by the recent release of the sequel to Zero Dawn, and pretty much unanimous positive reviews across the board. A more ambitious game, a huge improvement on already what was a very solid foundation, and just keeping up the trend of them escalating and going up and further in quality and further in respect within the industry, as well as amongst their first party brethren. So Guerrilla, they're looking pretty good in the future and will continue to impress.